Hello, my name is Emma. Welcome to this short introduction video about the offline charging feature. A number of features of the Smappee charging stations depend on internet connectivity. A couple of examples are overload protection and authenticated charging. Even though the internet is omnipresent, you might encounter the situation of an unexpected internet outage. It is important to know how the charging station deals with this and how it impacts your charging session and energy management. Let's kick off with a small visualization of the Smappee architecture. The most obvious reason for the internet connectivity is to make sure data is visualized in the Smappee app and dashboard. But there is more than meets the eye. When a charging session is initiated using an RFID card, authentication takes place using the internet connection to check if that token is allowed to use the charging station and if any discounts are assigned to the user of the card. Next to this, the overload protection and peak shaving features depend on an internet connection to perform the necessary calculations and to instruct the charger to make the necessary adjustments. Even though offline charging is enabled by default, let's first consider the situation where it is disabled. When the charging station loses its internet connection, the status LED of the station turns red. As overload protection cannot be guaranteed, the charging session is stopped and no new charging sessions can be initiated as authentication cannot take place. After the internet connection is resumed, the already started charging session resumes if it was a plug and charge session. However, if this was an authenticated session, a re-authentication is needed. After activating and configuring offline charging, this behavior changes. When a charging station goes offline, the status LED remains white and the charging session continues. A new charging session can be initiated on the condition that the token of the RFID card is amongst the 10 last tokens used on that charging station. You might think, nothing but pros, but there are some cons. As the charging station no longer responds to commands from the internet, overload protection cannot be guaranteed. To limit the risk of the main circuit breaker tripping, the charging speed is reduced to a set maximum current. We talk about this on the next slide. Something similar goes for the peak shaving configuration. As the charging station can no longer be controlled, there is no way to measure or control the maximum import from the grid. This might impact your capacity rate. And finally, the charging station fails back to standard charging instead of smart of surplus charging. Once the internet connection is restored, all features are restored automatically. Offline charging can be configured during the initial activation of the charging station or afterwards using the Smappee app. To do so, go to Settings and your Smappee charging stations. Select the charging station for which you want to configure offline charging. Here you find a slider called Offline Charging Allowed. Slide this to activate or deactivate offline charging. Once activated, you also need to configure fail-safe current. Remember that overload protection and peak shaving do not work while the charging station is offline. Reason why you need to set a static, maximum current for the charging station while in offline mode. This is a value you should be sure of that will be available, no matter what other devices are active in the building. The chosen value cannot be lower than 6 amps or higher than the maximum current assigned to the charger. Thank you for your attention during this video. You now understand the offline charging feature and how it impacts both charging behavior and general consumption behavior. If you have any further questions, please contact training@smappee.com. See you later.